Martha's dream was lit, a barred owl perched on her mailbox, hooting tax forms her. She woke 3 a.m., age 56, laughing into her palms. Nonsense. But dawn found her squinting through rain-streaked binoculars, field notebook trembling with pressed alder leaves. Seattle's urban owls were vanishing, evergreen bird clubs whispered about shifted migration patterns. Eco-grief had gnawed her for years. Now? A ridiculous, risky idea flared: census shadows herself. Who tracked city predators but predators? Ink smud. Martha's dream was lit, a barred owl perched on her fire escape, moonlight catching its striped feathers like a secret waiting to be unraveled. For weeks, she'd fumbled with binoculars, knees protesting as she crouched behind dumpsters, field notebook clutched tight. That tattered book held more than pressed leaves. It carried memories of childhood hikes with her father, his rough hands guiding hers to identify trillium blooms. Now, 56, she traced those same pages with ink-stained fingers, documenting urban owls for evergreen state birdwatching clubs. Her deepest fear wasn't failure but silence, hollow absence of hoots that once scored Seattle's nights, a quiet so thick it pressed against her ribs like a stalled elevator. Climate grief had gnawed her for years, a shadow she couldn't name until she joined Census Project. Each owl spotted felt like prying open a window in a stuffy room. One drizzly evening, Martha tripped over a root. Grace had never been her strong suit, sending her thermos clattering. As she righted herself, a low "Who cooks for you" echoed through cedars. Her breath hitched. There, just beyond a street lamp's glow, two golden eyes gleamed. Notebook trembled in her grip as she scribbled, heart pounding louder than her creaky joints. This was no grand rescue mission, just a woman with sore ankles and stubborn hope, turning dread into data. Every tally mark was a middle finger to despair. Martha's dream was lit, a barred owl perched on her fire escape, golden eyes reflecting streetlights like tiny suns. Next morning, she found talon marks in moss on her balcony railing. Proof. 56, she'd spent decades watching nature documentaries with a hollow ache, but this demanded action. Her local Evergreen State Birdwatching Club scoffed when she proposed an urban owl census. Too messy, too unpredictable. But Martha's frayed field notebook, stuffed with pressed maple leaves from childhood summers, held more than memories. It whispered patience. She started solo, tracing feather trails through alleys where dumpsters drowned out hoots. First week, she mistook a trash bag for a great horned owl. Laughed so hard her knees popped. Then came Eleanor, a retired park ranger with a penchant for neon binocular straps, who caught she staring into a cedar like it held state secrets. "You've got look," Eleanor said, tapping her temple. Eco-grief turned tracker. Together, they rallied a crew of women, some widowed, some between careers, all hungry for purpose, mapping owl territories across Seattle's concrete jungle. They logged sightings in Martha's notebook, now bulging with fresh leaves from each discovery site. Late one drizzly evening, crouched behind a community garden compost bin, Creator finally recorded what no database had yet shown: barred owls adapting their hunting patterns to streetlight glare. Data points became defiance. Each inked observation steadied her hands, once shaky with helplessness. When skeptics dismissed their findings as backyard hobbyism, Martha just grinned. Let them chatter. She knew truth grew in quiet places, between notebook pages, under pressed leaves, in determined silence of women rewriting their own endings. Martha's dream was lit, a barred owl perched on her fire escape, its dark eyes reflecting streetlights like tiny moons. By dawn, it vanished, leaving only a feather wedged between railings. She pocketed it, pressing it into her field notebook beside brittle maple leaves from last fall. 56 years old, knees creaking louder than floorboards, she'd spent decades watching Seattle's green spaces shrink. Climate anxiety gnawed her, a constant hum beneath rainstorms and traffic noise. But counting owls? That felt like fighting back. Evergreen State Birdwatching Clubs scoffed her urban census project. Owl populations don't shift in cities, one member sniffed. Woman smirked, scribbling notes as a garbage truck roared past. Doubt crept in anyway. What if she missed nests, misidentified calls? She spent nights cross-referencing recordings with library archives, stubborn as blackberry vines overtaking her backyard. One misstep left her tracking a mourning dove's coo for weeks before realizing her error. Instead of quitting, she laminated a cheat sheet to her binoculars. Winter brought fewer sightings, just crows huddled on power lines. Then, mid-January, a barred owl swooped past her kitchen window, scattering starlings like confetti. Creator hooped, nearly appending her tea. Data didn't lie, predators returned where prey thrived. Her notebook swelled with times, locations, weather patterns. She started mapping hotspots, overlaying them with old city plans. Concrete jungles had re-wilded themselves in pockets, and she was proving it. A community center talk, she unfurled her findings before skeptical neighbors. Slides showed owl territories expanding along forgotten ravines, their presence stitching fractured ecosystems together. Someone muttered about luck. She tapped her pressed leaves, symbols of persistence, not fragility. Turns out, she deadpanned, we're not only stubborn things in this city. Laughter loosened room. Later, a teen asked how to start tracking. Martha handed her a spare notebook, its spine cracked with use. Rain or burnout couldn't stop her now. Every sighting was a middle finger to despair, every scribbled line a pact with wild. Feather in her notebook? Still there, proof that even in steel and glass, nature left its mark, and so could she. Martha's dream was lit, a barred owl perched on her fire escape, moonlight glinting off its striped feathers like a secret wink. For weeks, she'd scribbled notes in her battered field notebook, its pages fat with pressed maple leaves and caffeine-stained sketches. Seattle's Urban Owl Census Project had seemed impossible when she'd first heard about it. Evergreen State Birdwatching Club. 56 and barely tech-savvy enough to send a text, she'd almost laughed. But grief over shrinking salmon runs and silent summers had coiled tight in her chest. So she'd bought binoculars with her Social Security splurge money and learned Merlin bird ID like some folks mastered crossword puzzles. Tonight, guts trumped doubt. Crouched behind a dumpster, not her most dignified moment, she steadied her phone against a recycling bin, zooming in on owl's talons gripping a rat. Snap. Shot was shaky, but undeniable, proof of predators adapting as cedars died off. She uploaded it to Community Science Portal, tagging it Rapafe Surprise. By dawn, her inbox blazed. A wildlife biologist from UW had shared her photo statewide, dubbing her Seattle's Owl Whisperer. Same birder who'd once side-eyed her misidentified crow sketch now slid into comments with a stunned Martha. That's your shot. Next club meetup, women elbowed forward, waving phones with her viral image. Someone brought owl-shaped cookies. Martha clutched her notebook, its pressed leaves crinkling like laughter. For years, eco-grief had made her feel like a ghost in her own city. But here, under fluorescent lights and a tacky Owl-Star researcher banner, warmth bloomed. She hadn't just tracked birds, she'd mapped her way back to belonging. Later, reviewing data on barred owls moving north, she grinned. Take that, climate dread. Her notebook wasn't just records, it was rebellion, one scribbled page a time. Martha's dream was lit, a barred owl perched on her fire escape, staring like it knew secrets. 56. She'd spent years fretting over melting glaciers while her own backyard felt like a silent accomplice. Then came Urban Owl Census, a clipboard and flashlight rebellion against eco-grief. Her field notebook, once just pressed leaves and grocery lists, became a battleground. Each inky tally of feathers and hoots was proof, small actions could hold back tide. She roped in neighbors, retired teachers, baristas, even a skeptical teen who now imitated owl calls with unsettling accuracy. Evergreen State birdwatching clubs took notice, swapping rare sighting bragging rights for Martha's grassroots grit. Odd habit? She whispered thank yous to every owl spotted, as if gratitude could stitch ecosystem back together. Maybe it did. Winters grew unpredictable, but her crew adapted, tracking shifts in nesting patterns like detectives on a case. Data became their weapon, community their armor. By year's end, Martha wasn't just counting owls, she was guiding others to turn panic into purpose. That tattered notebook, now crammed with sketches and storm dates, symbolized something bigger, proof that stubborn hope could roost anywhere. So grab your binoculars, your hunch is enough to start. World's waiting for your wild, watchful eye.